So at this point, I've spoken to thousands of men, fathers, husbands, former husbands, both as a mental health nurse and as a nurse educator. And I still see clients at the hospital today. I don't think there's enough guidance for men's mental health. Without diving into clinical stuff, I think you've probably heard it, and I tell this to my students all the time. Mental health is everywhere. It's not just in a hospital setting. We all have our minds, we all have our own mental health and maintenance of it. It's about taking care of that daily mental health. We call it mental hygiene, right? You brush your teeth every day. You have to basically reset your mind, clear your mind to prepare for the day and all the challenges that it has. And if I'm talking to leaders, I'm talking to men, I'm talking to fathers and husbands, you have way too much on your plate and it clutters the mind. Now, there is an element to shut out the noise and get work done. But in my experience, that ends up making us really cold, really distant from the ones who depend on us, the ones who actually need us to show up every day. Whether it's your clients or your family, they still need you to be at your best, right? And I can speak to fathers, but I can also speak to men in general, because I think we've all been there. Having a busy day at work, getting home, trying to switch between work mode and family mode, parked in our garage, parked in our driveway, engine's already off, and you're trying to just sit in the silence and reset. What version of me needs to come through now, in this next moment? Some days are successful, some days are not. Especially if you have too much on your plate, you're thinking about everything. That quiet moment in the car, there's a lot that goes through your head. And for me, it's one of the most critical parts. That silent moment when you wonder how the kids were doing all day, wonder how your wife's doing all day, how your loved ones are. Because maybe throughout the day, you didn't have time to think about them as much. We find time here and there, but throughout a workday, can you actually check on them? Can you actually catch up with them? Are they even waiting up for me anymore? There are days that they do, there are days that they don't. It makes you wonder, what made them wait up those days? Or, lately they haven't been waiting up for me. Maybe they've learned to live without me. And it's such a dark thought, and we have to be very careful because you end up going down a very dark hole from there. One thing that I do want to talk about in this episode is ownership. Owning your situation, your circumstances, not lashing out at the world simply because you think you don't deserve what's happening right now. And this might be a tough topic to dive into, but you've probably read books, heard about books, or listened to the audiobook of extreme ownership. Ownership's something that a lot of us are probably resistant to, or we try to not think about, not talk about. And when I talk about ownership, it's not just like placing blame on only yourself, right? But that's the core concept of it. That my life is the way it is right now because of me. Good or bad. Not only during the good times, even in the hard times. That, I created this situation myself. Owning it would be, I will rectify this situation. And from what I've seen, I've talked to thousands of, you could say, failed fathers. The people would label a lot of these men in the hospital that I work at as failures. Lost everything. Burned bridges to their family. Or their family cut them off because of the poor decisions that they've made. There's an element of people saying that you can never fail. I think that there is a point. There's a point of actual failure. And maybe it's that one time when you refuse to get up. It's that one time that you refuse to rectify a situation and completely run out the door and never come back. If I'm talking to somebody who's known a man like that, there's nothing wrong with saying that, maybe they have failed us. Somebody who's walked out on his family. If that guy keeps trying to get up and show up, I wouldn't say that he's a complete failure. But the guys that I work with, who I've talked to in the hospital especially, they've admitted it. The life that they live now is a life of a failed father. And across the board, when we have these conversations, I have all these conversations with these men, and they say, yeah, I failed because I thought of myself more. I placed blame everywhere else in this world, except for right here. Taking ownership of every angle in your life, the things that we need to audit in our life, we have to own our actual situations. We try to place blame somewhere else. To me, that's not the strongest way to deal with these problems. It's not the strongest way to deal with everything that we have to take care of in this life. Especially in our generation, especially in our new economy, it's easy to place blame everywhere else, especially when it comes to money. Oh, my family didn't know how to do this. I was never taught this. They never taught us this in school. You know, speaking for me, man, I'm in a dark hole of nursing school debt, still climbing out of it, but making big changes to do that. And I was only able to do that when I owned the situation, not place blame somewhere else, not look for someone else to answer for it. I took it myself. Find a way, rectify the situation, build your way out of the hole. You know, money is not just a math problem. It's not just a number. It's the provision of what life you can actually give to yourself, to your family, to whoever needs it, to whoever depends on you. Addiction is another pattern that I saw. The addiction to a substance, the addiction to social media, scrolling. It's the addiction to distraction. And that's kind of the world we live in today. We're in a highly distracted world, and it's easy to just escape. Audit what takes your focus right now. Let's look at it. What's pulling my focus at every given moment? First thing in the morning, yeah, I'm a victim of this. I pull out my phone, check on something, want to look up something, want to check the markets today, doom scrolling on social media, diving into YouTube, looking for the newest podcast episode. Oh, because it's learning. I need to catch up. I need to learn this and that. Distracting us, getting us addicted to it, and never taking action from that point. It's learning how to silence that noise. Own your attention span. What do you focus on? What pulls your attention? What needs our attention? What fire needs our fuel more? Pull that target closer. We have to eliminate, we have to kill the thief of our distraction and our attention span. Another one is our physical health is something we have to own. Not just how we look, but the foods that we eat, the energy levels that we have, what we take daily. Yeah, in our world today especially, it's really difficult because everything's convenient. Everything that's unhealthy is a little cheaper. But it's about taking ownership, right? Having authority over what goes into your body, what you do with your body, how you treat it. Number 4 is being stuck in the past. You know, I've heard a lot over the past few years about shadow work and looking back at the past and realizing that there was a time that we were wronged and we argued that it was trauma and it was traumatic and all that stuff. Hey, especially when you're a kid and you were treated wrongfully, that's not your fault. What ends up being our fault nowadays, in the current time, is if we allow ourselves to be stuck there. So yeah, I'll say shadow work and everything else that you hear on social media now, it's super important. But it's not to just reminisce. It's not just to romanticize or place blame on that one situation. To rectify a situation is to own it now. And yeah, sometimes we have to operate with maybe a handicap. And there's nothing wrong with that. Look around you. Everybody has a handicap in life. Everybody's dealt with problems. Everyone's dealt with struggles, some to varying degrees, some to more severe degrees than probably what I've experienced. The ones that I've spoken to in the hospital have dealt with things that I couldn't even imagine. The most severe cases of trauma and abuse. Allowing yourself to be stuck in the past is where the problem lies. We have to find a way to move past that. There are ways to hypnotize yourself and erase it from your memory. The mind is a powerful thing. But, for me, it's being able to look at your current life circumstances and what's happened in the past and reconciling that. To me, that's what makes the story even better. Now, there are obviously a lot more severe cases of trauma and maybe need more clinical support. I'm talking about the strength that you actually have to own what happened in the past and rectify it to the point of, what can I do now? I might be operating from this negative space or from a negative level in life, a handicap, a disability. That makes your story even stronger. Being able to own what has happened, you're operating with it now. And that just makes your story, your work, even more meaningful. Another one is the lack of drive and purpose. It's easy to get lost nowadays, to be stuck in a purposeless life, or even just the purpose of serving myself, getting mine, getting what I need. One thing I see a lot of is those that end up feeling like they lacked something in the past, they end up wanting to just continue to feed themselves now. I didn't have this, or people took this away from me, so now I'm going to get mine. And it's all about me. If you continue down that path, what I've seen is people end up realizing that you have no drive in life. Because once your needs are met, there's nothing more to drive you forward. There's nothing more that pulls you forward. Now, I'm not saying you need to have a family. I'm not saying you have to get married. I'm not saying you have to build a business. But look deep inside and ask yourself, what is driving me? What is my purpose in life? What pulls me forward to show up every day? Having to show up more than yourself pulls you forward. Having that lack of drive and purpose is what I've seen affect a lot of men into not being able to perform past their capabilities and their potential in life. Maybe not even reaching their potential in life. Another pattern that I saw was broken relationships, poor, unhealthy relationships, toxic relationships. It's not just about cutting out people from your life. Yeah, there are people that don't help you. There are people that cause you to lose focus in life, maybe a bad influence. It's about protecting and owning the relationships that you currently have, especially the ones that have meaning in your life. If you think about your relationships today, maybe the ones that don't feel like they're the healthiest, it's always about ownership. Am I the one that's causing this relationship to suffer? Am I the bad influence? Can I do more? Am I the one not communicating? Am I the one not reaching out? Relationships are broken. They're unhealthy. Can I make it healthier? Is how we should look at it. Maybe it's me. You've probably heard someone say, like, I just don't get along with anybody. Well, if I was that person, I think the best thing to do would be asking myself, am I the problem in these relationships? Own that. Own what you can control in a relationship. If the relationship ends up failing, it's not for a lack of effort on your part, because you've owned everything that you can control at that point. And the last one, I would probably say it's the deepest one. Maybe, I don't know anymore, the most controversial one. But having no faith and moral compass in life. We live in a world today that tells us that you can take control of everything in your life. That you create your life. You manifest this. There was a time where I believed in manifestation and the secret and the power. There was one thing that got me to come full circle back to how I look at life now, especially with my faith. There are moments where it's too heavy to carry. Life is too heavy to carry. The burdens, the circumstances, the conditions that you're living under, it makes life too hard to bear. And that's where you have to resort to something that will outlast you. The moral compass, the faith practice, the belief in something greater than yourself. Self-belief is important, obviously. You can do amazing things in this world. We all can. Where I think we go to a different level is being humble enough to realize that all these results were not just because of me. There was a point in my life where I accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish. I took pride in that. It was work, getting this degree, making this much. And I remember thinking, oh man, I make things happen in my life. This is the only thing I probably owned at first. It was like my results. Until came a point where me and my wife were dealing with something so dark, so difficult, and I got humbled. And that's where I realized the true essence of God in my life. I remember questioning, like, how is this happening? Because everything I wanted, I can get. I manifested a beautiful life. And then there are things I realized that are out of our control. I had no other place to look. It's almost like God literally faced us towards Him. The darkness, the hardship of hiking up a mountain with a heavy burden is the story of Jesus Christ. When I finally embraced that hey, there are things that are out of my control, that's when I realized the power of God in my life. The power of the almighty strength that surpasses human strength, because we're just weak humans. But our spirit, our soul can be powerful if we bring it back to the source that it came from. Here I am talking about owning everything, all your life circumstances, except for this one thing. The destiny that you have, the story that you will have at the end of your life, it's God's. God owns all of this. Own what you have control over in this world, the good or the bad. But at the end of the day, the God that I'm talking about, He's both a just God and He's also a merciful God. If you absolutely can't own a circumstance, a hardship, a trauma in your life, I'll tell you, God can. God will own it. He already has.